Cool. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman John Garamendi of California. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
You heard the interview I did with Mark Meadows, the Freedom Caucus, just now. What's your reaction?
Quid pro quo. It's a deal. The president has structured a deal, put 800,000 men and women, young dreamers, on the line in exchange for his border wall. That's what this is all about. He is putting at risk those 800,000.
So would you vote for the border wall funding, billions of dollars for the border wall, if it allows these 800,000 dreamers to remain in the United States?
I think it's a bad deal. The president didn't need to do anything. This is going to go through the courts to determine the constitutionality. To say that President Trump is a constitutional genius, come on, give me a break. This would work its way through the courts. Maybe it's going to stand muster, maybe it's not. In the meantime, we can move forward with a comprehensive immigration reform. Certainly we need to secure our borders, but to build a wall, there is nobody that thinks that wall will work.
If there has to be a compromise, and you know that a lot of times there needs to be a compromise, what will you do to support something to give people like Mark Meadows, for example, something they want, that border security, including funding for the wall, in order to have an opening to allow these 800,000 young people to remain in the United States legally?
Take that down payment on the border wall that the president wants, give it to the Coast Guard, because the Coast Guard has the real potential of stopping the drugs coming into the United States. And we need to move forward. Yes, there needs to be an E-Verify. There needs to be a guest worker program. And by the way, you've got about 11 million people out there. What is their status? These are the undocumented people in the United States. We need to have a comprehensive reform. Mark wants to take the first step forward with the DACA legislation. Great, good step. Now let's put the rest of this puzzle together and solve this very
realistically. You see a possibility there can be legislation passed in the House and the Senate within the next 6 months, something the president will sign into law that will in the end allow these dreamers to stay here legally?
It's going to be a tough go. Let's understand that the president spent 18 months poisoning this well. His rhetoric, from the very first day he announced his candidacy, poisoned this entire immigration issue. And it's going to be an extremely difficult thing, particularly for the
But he says he loves the dreamers, he wants to be compassionate, he wants to work something out, and you just heard him say he thinks in the end this will even be better for them.
This is the kind of love none of us want. This is the kind of love that put 800,000 young men and women who came forward, who signed an agreement with the nation that they would give their personal information in order to be able to go to school, in order to work in this country. 91% of these people, they are working, they are in school, they are performing. You take these 800,000 people and you move them out of this economy, we're talking about as much as a $500 billion loss, economic loss to this nation over the next decade.
But do you really fear, realistically, that these 800,000 young people could be deported from the United States?
Absolutely, no doubt. You just heard Mr. Meadows talk about that. And we know that the president's ICE operation are going around looking for the low-hanging fruit. Not the criminals, although they're doing some of that, but they're going out taking people literally as they bring their children to school. Here we got 800,000 targets for them. This is going to be a major challenge across this nation, totally unnecessary. It would work its way through the courts, the current DACA situation, and found to be constitutional or not. And the Congress has to come to grips with a comprehensive immigration reform.
But is that realistic, given the nature of the U.S. Congress right now?
We can always be hopeful. We can always.
But do you think it's realistic that within 6 months you could get comprehensive immigration reform?
It's going to be hard enough to get what this quid pro quo.
Just for the 800,000.
Exactly.
Let alone the millions of others who are undocumented living here in the United States, most of whom living very peacefully.
Peacefully and employed and performing in our economy and paying taxes. Keep in mind that none of the DACAs can receive benefits. They can't receive welfare. That's part of the deal. So we've got a situation here that is just totally unnecessary, extremely harmful to the economy, obviously harmful to the families, many of them married, now have children of their own, who are citizens.
So you're worried about that. While I have you on a totally different subject, you're a member of the Armed Services Committee. I know you're going to be briefed tomorrow on this escalating tension with North Korea right now, the nuclear tension, the possibility they could be launching another intercontinental ballistic missile. What do you want to hear from the President of the United States to try to calm things down?
I want to hear nothing. I don't want to hear a tweet. I want to hear a deep breath being taken. We've got a very big stick. Teddy Roosevelt says, carry the big stick. Nobody has a bigger stick than the United States. Yes, we could wipe North Korea out. It'd be a horrendous, horrible war. But we could do that. But the other part of it, speak softly. Get back to the negotiating table. We've got some really good things to negotiate. There's no peace treaty. We've been 64 years without a peace treaty between South Korea.
You want direct negotiations with North Korea?
Absolutely. Get the 6 parties involved. That does include South Korea. North Korea involves China, Japan, and Russia. Get together. Negotiate this thing. There is fruitful negotiations that are possible. Is a freeze possible? Quite possibly. In exchange for...
A freeze of what? Their nuclear program? That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
But they're not going to give up their nukes.
Well, they're not... We don't know, do we? We don't know until we sit down at the negotiating table. Their economy's in trouble. We need to ramp up the sanctions. Go to the banks. Prohibit the banks from doing business with them. Those are all negotiating principles that we have. But this talk of war, this cheap talk, is not cheap at all. It is extraordinarily dangerous because there could be an incident that could start it. And then hell will be paid.
Let's hope not. All right, Congressman John Garamendi of California, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up...